and we are live with our 14th edition of Nansen Office Hours. Alex, how you doing this week?
Good as always. You?
Doing good as well. What you been up to this week?
This week, well, we got an office in Singapore last week, so been ordering furniture for the office.
Mm,
Um, Met up with some crypto people here in Singapore, which has been nice. So getting to know the local crew, and then yeah, the general Nansen hustling.
Nansen
You?
hustling. There you go. Same. Nansen hustling. Still in New York City. Enjoying life out here. It's blue skies today. A little crisp. Um, yeah, good life.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so the markets are back from. I mean, not fully back, but back from a scary weekend. So it's good to see. Um, let's just dive right in here. Oh, someone shared some sick chairs in the chat. Thank you for that. I think that was Chris.
Nice. Gonna check that out. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's dive in on some dashboards. Where do you want to start this week?
Where to start? I mean, hot contracts seems to be the place where we often start these days. So maybe that's one place we could go. Should we
Yeah, that's one
load that
option.
up?
Other option is on some of the new dashboards that we've rolled out, or the reskinned dashboards.
Yeah, I think we rolled that back just now because there was didn't pass QA.
Okay.
So I don't think we can show that yet, but it's on the way. We're gonna get the ETH2 deposits dashboard reskinned. So it's very close. Gonna be out hopefully later today or tomorrow. So just
Perfect.
stay tuned on that one.
All right. Well, let's dive in on the hot contracts dashboard then. While you load that up, for anyone who's new here, welcome to our office hours. This is an hour-long conversation between Alex and I, and hopefully you guys as well. You can feel free to participate in the chat. Just write anything in the chat bar on the right. If you have any projects that you'd like us to look into live here, feel free to mention them. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to share. Yes, alpha leak, indeed.
All right. So hot contracts. The concept here is simple. You can look at newly deployed smart contracts. The parameter up here to the right says how many days old the contract can be at most. So the default is 7 days. So it's basically any new smart contract in the last 7 days. And we surface the ones that have the most capital inflow. And so that could often be yield farms, it can be liquidity pools for new tokens, and so on and so forth. And you can also sort by the different columns. So by default, it sorts by the most inflow in the last hour. So it's, because the data is practically real time. So if you reload this, it's going to, show new numbers because every time you query it, you get the latest data. But you can also sort by other time granularities, like 1 day and 7 days. You can also sort it by the number of depositors. So like one in the last hour, the last day, or the last week. And then there's this magic column over here, which lets you sort by the number of smart money addresses. And so there's one that sticks out here right away when I sort by this one. And that is the sushi swap pool for WETH, wrapped ether, and what is this? Is it that's alchemy, right? Alchemix, sorry.
Yep.
So my guess is that there's some kind of liquidity incentives for providing liquidity to Sushi Swap. Maybe it's Onsen, maybe it's something with Alchemix. People will probably know more than me in the comment fields about this, but you can see this right away when you just open up the dashboard. There's a couple of other ones as well. So this one just called staking pools with like 3 smart money in it. Could be worth looking at that. Or if I just go back to sorting here, there was also one we noticed, which is this waifus project. I don't know if it was this morning, my time, or if it was yesterday morning that this launched. But there's been in the last 7 days, if I sort on this again while you sit there, there's been $5.4 million flowing into the Waifu's contract. I think this is basically like a fork of hash masks. So what we could do is we could drill down into this and see, using Wallet Profiler on this contract, who has been depositing Ether into this contract. So maybe let's do that next. The way you would do this, by the way, is like, we should have more convenient links here, and we might add those later. But you can just click on Etherscan here, and it takes you to this contract page on Etherscan, and then you can plug this address into the Wallet Profiler. And so I've already done that here. This is the Wallet Profiler for this Waifu's contract. You see it holds 3,373 Ether. And you can also see that or at least its day of activity, it's basically the last. Okay, so then that answers the question I had earlier. So it looks like it started on March 1st. You had 505 transactions. Oh wait, these are actually outgoing transactions. So not necessarily. People might have deposited earlier, but I would imagine it's basically 2 days ago since they started interacting with it. Then what you can do is scroll all the way down here to look at the top interacting wallets. So this is all the counterparties that have been transacting with this particular wallet. And so I can sort from on the ETH volume in column, and this shows me all the addresses that have been sending Ether into this token sale contract. And you see right away there's some well-known names here. Jordan Fish. That's I think one prominent person who's active in this. We see that they sent 44 Ether from that wallet. Don't know if this is actually Jordan Fish, aka Crypto Kobe, but at least it has their ENS name, so could be. There's NWA.ether, Wubbalubadubdub.ether, which I think we recognize from the hash masks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Daniel? So
yeah, I think that was one of the top 3 hash masks buyers.
So we conveniently pulled up the wallet profiler on hash masks as well to just compare, right? So if I just do the exact same thing, like I've got the hash mask contract here, I can scroll down and look at ETH volume in, the same thing, right? You see Wubbalubadubdub, a bit of a tongue twister, as the second largest ETH contributor to the hash mask sale, and looks like they also aped into this one, but with a much smaller amount, 20 Ether. And yeah, I could actually click through this. So there's 1,378 addresses that interacted with the Waifu's contract. Seeing a couple of other like .eth or ENS names. Some smart money, Wi-Fi Maxi, Sisyphus.eth, some smart LPs, and some other ENS names there.
I think one thing to potentially look at is sort by ETH transactions in, not just ETH volume, because on any of these contracts with a bonding curve, the people who come in early are more comfortable doing a lot of transactions. So this is kind of like a proxy for how early someone got in. Obviously not fully one-to-one, but it is a way of kind of checking who got in and who bought a lot early. So for example, that heavy DEX trader put in 40 ETH pretty early, and I think I'm surprised how come Jordan Fish isn't here. I think he had 40 ETH as well and some high number of transactions in.
Here. He's got 16.
Okay, only 16. So, but yeah.
I wonder actually if the ETH transactions also will count people sending the Waifu tokens, because it's the same. The token sale and the actual token contract is the same. So it might actually be picking up people just trading or sending off the Waifu NFTs. So that could be kind of a source of error in that sense.
But would would that increase the ETH transactions in?
Yeah, because technically you're making, maybe we should filter those out, but technically you're making a transaction with the contract. And so it would be kind of a zero value ETH transaction that you do with the contract. But yeah, that's maybe not so intuitive. Maybe something we could consider filtering out. Yeah. But at least this shows you the deposits of Ether, right? That are made by these guys. And it seems like the volumes are like much lower than Hashmasks. Right? Like the biggest guys in Hashmask went really big. 476 Ether, 349. Biggest one is 105.
Yeah.
But the sale isn't over yet, maybe. Or?
I'm not sure, but I think this project was more compared to Bull Run Babes
Okay.
than Hash Masks. And I think, so Bull Run Babes had a bit less of a, I think it was a hyped launch. It was a Blue Kirby special. And then I'm not sure what they're up to these days, but it certainly didn't explode to the same level of popularity that Hash Masks did.
Right. Interesting. This is 1,378. And, well, yeah, with Hashmasks it's more.
Yeah.
It says 2,000, but that's actually just the limit that we show, so it's more than 2,000. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's waifus. Anything else we see in the hot contracts that we should look more closely at?
Well, one thing we can do before going back to the hot contracts is talk about smart alerts a little bit here. And, we saw in waifus and in hash masks that wubbalubadubdub.eth. This, when you see addresses like that on multiple in multiple projects, those are sometimes noteworthy addresses and potentially worth setting up a smart alert for. So maybe you can just pull up the smart alerts tab and we can talk through how to set something like that up.
Yeah. So let me just first grab the address itself. So it's this guy, right? And I just scroll all the way to the right. Just click Etherscan here. Grab that link and copy it. We're going to make this much easier in a future version. But for now, it's kind of a workaround you have to do. You click Smart Alerts. Then you simply click Add Trigger up there to the right. And there's, you can do simple triggers or advanced triggers. In this case, we just want to do a simple trigger. So, what was it? Wubba lubba dub? Dub, something like that. And I just paste in their address. And I can choose, if I want to filter out, so I only look at token transfers, only ETH transactions, or only contact creations. Here I'm just going to keep it, with everything, because I'm curious on anything they do. And I think some of these, you could filter it and say like, look, I only care what they do with waifu or, hash masks, right? Oh, actually, I don't think we have hash masks there because it's an NFT. But yeah, you could filter down the tokens if you want, or just do everything. And then you can plug in your Telegram ID, which you get from just once you set up the bot, which you can get the instructions for down here to the right. You just copy in the Telegram chat ID. When you hit save, it's going to say that the smart alert has been activated with the trigger name. And that's pretty much it. Then on, you will be getting transactions whenever this address does anything.
Yeah, one thing I'll add here is once you start using smart alerts quite a bit, so I've mentioned this in a previous call, but you should try and make your smart alerts as specific as possible, because otherwise you're getting notified way too often and you're going to end up probably muting the channel. And so you want to make them as specific and as relevant to you as possible. In this case, as you're setting up these different triggers, it actually might make more sense, to call this trigger something like NFT bros or NFT something like that. Like you can set up a specific channel on Telegram just for people that you're tracking for NFT purposes, and then funnel multiple triggers into this one Telegram channel. So you could be tracking wubbalubadubdub.eth. I think last time there was like virtualbacon.eth on the Hashmask contract. There's a few of these like known large NFT investors. Maybe even JordanFish.eth to see when he buys.
If you take Jordan Fish there,
yeah,
and then we
waifus or other NFTs.
You just simply put a comma and then the next address. And there'll be a Neon Bear. Some of these guys you could just be following, right? Create alerts on. And so in a future version of Dunstan, what we want to do is we want to let you save your own segments. So you can make like an NFT Bros segment, and then for your reference later on, it would be easier to set up the alert because you could just pick that segment that you already created. But for now, you have to kind of manually copy them in, which is a little bit cumbersome, but does the job.
Yeah. And building on this idea of having multiple channels for different topics, you can also set up people like different channels for if you're tracking different yield farmers. So if you find some yield farmers that are going after opportunities that are relevant to you, I think you can broadly categorize most yield farmers as either degen or kind of risk adjusted. And on the risk adjusted side, you have people who farm with stable coins most of the time. And on the kind of degen side, you have people who are going after these long tail, early .finance websites. Like they try and get in as early as possible when there's still like 10,000 in the 10,000s of % APY. So you can find these different categories of people, or kind of create different categories of people in your mind of wallets to track, and then get notified when they do different things.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You could think of it as like risk tranches almost of notifications, right?
Yeah, and like segment out the notifications that you get so that it's not all coming in the same spot.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Do you use smart alerts yourself?
I got some stuff going. I do.
Can't leak the alpha, right? You don't want to share your smart alerts.
I think everyone kind of develops their own strategy, but I think what I'm saying here is probably one of the better strategies that I've seen, is having these like different channels and have a suite of notifications. Yeah,
I think I also find that I tend to actually update my smart alerts quite frequently because the space moves so fast. So if let's say I'm yield farming some token, then I want to observe like what's happening with that token. And, after maybe a couple of days, once, let's say I exited that token, or, I've sold them, or I'm no longer interested, I will just go in and switch it off, and then maybe set up another alert based on another trade that I've done, or some farming that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So I think the idea should be that smart alerts they are quite ephemeral. Like you create them, and they're useful for a little while, but then you can retire them easily and then just create new ones. So it's kind of a living thing. It's not like you're trying to create these like perfect rules that will always be relevant. It makes more sense to think of them as like, hey, I'm going to set up this alert right now, and that's going to be very useful for me over the next few days while I'm in this position, for example.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the position tracking. I've chatted with some people who... So one of the things that you and I used Nansen for quite a bit is discovering new opportunities and then doing due diligence on new opportunities. But there's a lot of people who use Nansen just to monitor positions. I would say that's kind of a third use case, is when you're in a position, how do you make sure that it's still safe, that people are not exiting, that maybe more people are joining in and validating the opportunity. And so one of the things you can potentially do is set up a smart alert for just the token that you're monitoring. Let's say you're farming in Float Bank. We've mentioned that one before, and you want to check any large transactions of Bank because you want to see if anyone's like dumping in large size. So you can just choose the Bank token and then set like a fairly high USD threshold yeah, like a million, or I think a good place to check to set this threshold is to go on CoinGecko and check the liquidity for different tokens. So if you pull up, bank, and then scroll down to the bottom where they list out the exchanges, you can see the +2, -2% liquidity.
Yeah.
Or depth, rather.
So if someone buys $7,500 worth of bank in the SushiSwap pool, they're going to move the price 2% upwards.
Yeah.
And so maybe you want to put it, actually that's pretty low, right? So you might want to put it something like 15,000, right? Or that's like 2x of that. And so, yeah, but this is kind of you, as you said earlier, you don't want to make it too frequent, right? So it might end up just spamming you. But you would probably want to track something like this, because that can generate like several percentage points of slippage if someone makes that trade.
While we're still on the topic of smart alerts, maybe we can quickly go through some of the advanced smart alerts. So the advanced smart alerts are, I believe, right now just for VIP and alpha customers, but just to kind of show some people what you can do with these.
Yeah, so the idea with advanced smart alerts is that they have their own kind of queries, and the queries have different parameters. So it is kind of overwhelming, the user interface. Hopefully we can make it a bit simpler. But this kind of mirrors what we were looking at earlier with hot contracts. So hot contracts is this dashboard, right? So what if you could just get notifications whenever there's a new contender, right, at the top of this one, for example. And so, well, the way you would do this is you just go to advanced smart alerts, you do hot contracts query, and then maybe you want to say, hey, I want to get notified if there's an inflow of $1 million in the last hour into any new contract. You can even specify, like, actually, I just want to get in the last 3 days. Like, I want to get the freshest contracts. Or the other way around, you can say, like, it's not that important when the contract was created. So, like, the last year, I will just take any new contract. The problem with doing that, though, is that you will then typically get liquidity pools like Uniswap and so on show up. So it gets a bit noisy. That's like one reason why we filter only for the newest contracts. But yeah, you can take the minimum inflow in USD terms, or you can even do like, hey, if it has more than 10 depositors in 1 hour, I want to get notified. So that's a really, really useful one. The other query is token flows, which is kind of a similar concept, except you're not looking at money flowing into a contract. You're looking at just how much accumulation has been going on in a specific token. So, for example, if I say in the last hour, whenever there's $10 million worth of inflow into a token, meaning someone is kind of accumulating it, I want to get notified. And here too, you can specify the age of the token. So if you only care about like relatively new tokens, maybe you only take the ones that have been issued or minted in the last like 30 days or 7 days, whatever. Or, if you just don't care, you can just put this at some arbitrary, very high number. But those are the two queries we have right now, token flows and hot contracts. They're quite useful. Would highly encourage you to test them out.
One note that someone requested was in the hot contracts being able to specify smart money depositors, because I think most people use that as kind of a proxy for interesting contracts to look at.
Yeah, I like that idea. So basically, we should have like another field here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I need to make a note of that.
Yeah, I noted it in the
cool.
the notes, but yeah,
nice.
There's a couple questions here in the chat that I think we can run through. Brain, not Brian, but Brain, mentions when clicking an Etherscan link, it used to open in a new window. That's no longer the case, and he's requesting that we open it in a new tab at least.
Yeah,
and I completely agree with that. It's
a bit annoying.
Very annoying when it reloads the page, and then you need to go back, and then you need to wait another 30 seconds.
Yeah, you're probably aware that you can also just command click or control click.
Yeah, but when you
forget, sure, it's annoying.
I feel your pain, brain.
So yeah, unfortunately, this is because this UI tool that we use, which is called Metabase, and they made an update where they changed this, and so it was kind of a bit out of our control. But the good news is when we kind of reskin to, for example, what the gas tracker looks like, which I'll show you just now. When we reskin so that it has this style, here we will be able to open up in different tabs. So if you see here, by default, when you click these links, it opens in a new tab. So here we have control over the user experience a bit more. And so it's going to be like this with all the new dashboards.
Well, and these new dashboards load significantly faster. So even if it didn't and you messed up, you wouldn't have to wait another 30 seconds for it to load.
That's right. That's right, actually. So if you were on this and you end up going to Etherscan for whatever reason, clicking on something, you could go back here, it loads much faster.
So speedy.
Yeah, it's also cool because it loads fast with kind of a cached version of the tables. And then as you're viewing them, it actually runs in the background and fetches the latest data. So it's going to refresh the charts if no one else has looked at these in a little while. It's going to say 20 minutes ago since it last updated, but then boom, it just refreshes it, as you come in and start browsing the charts.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can just chat briefly, if you're up for it, about kind of like the volume of data that is being processed for some of these charts, and how much stuff is being crunched in the back end, and where, just kind of give people a bit of a peek under the hood on what we're crunching and where we're pulling the data from, and how we're displaying it.
So we basically crunch. It depends on the chart what data you need to look at, but typically we will crunch all of the data throughout all of history, for some of the charts that we run. And so that's pretty expensive, right? Because I think, I can't remember from the top of my head, but I believe the way we store all the historical data for Ethereum, it's in the order of magnitude of around 1 terabyte. So it's pretty heavy loads. Of course, if you're into the more technical aspects of this stuff, we do a lot of partitioning, we do a lot of pre-aggregations and things like that to make it snappier. But it's still quite a lot of data that needs to be scanned. So, if you're looking at this chart, for example, the top 20 gas spender entities, we actually have to calculate, what is the gas expenditure across all of the different entities. First, we have to check all the different addresses that spent gas, and then you have to check. Let me grab out all the entities and then make an aggregation that says, hey, these are the top 20, and then only pull out those. So even if you just see the top 20 addresses here, under the hood, there's a lot more being calculated because it needs to figure out what is actually the top 20. And so, maybe Gas Tracker is not the best example because most of the stuff, shows data for just the last week because we want to keep it timely. But some of the other dashboards we have will basically, scan, all the data that exists throughout history. So I think maybe ETH Tracker is a good example. Maybe also Stablecoin Master, and so on. But yeah, we're talking about terabyte of data being scanned in some cases. In other cases, tens or hundreds of gigabytes of data being scanned on the fly.
And what are some of the efforts that we're doing to improve this? How are we decreasing load times, and what's the progress there?
Yeah, so we're doing quite a number of things. One is we are building what we call the mediator, which takes a request from the user from the front end and then routes it to the most appropriate data store for that query. And so and in addition, it can check if there's like a cached version available. So if you load up this one, you see up here to the right, it says 4 minutes ago, right? And that's because there's a cached result that was available there. And so it can just fetch that, and in the meantime, it could recalculate in the background, like what's, actually being done. So it's a combination of using different types of database technologies and also using caching, and then also using kind of intelligent routing of the request from the front end to the different database solutions.
Cool. Very cool. If anyone has any follow-up questions in the chat, feel free to ask. We got Alex on the hot seat here. You can ask him all your burning questions.
But the point is that, a lot of the stuff we did early on, I still think of Nansen as like in the MVP stage, like minimum viable product. We just wanted to ship something out the door. Now we're at a stage where like the actual infrastructure is a lot better. The web app itself is much snappier, and now it's kind of turning into like a real product. So you can expect to generally see a much better user experience, and also lower latency on like everything in the platform, which is pretty cool. Maybe one example to mention here is also live dex trades, because it uses a streaming infrastructure, right? So it doesn't use the same database technology that the other dashboards use, because it needs to update, on the fly. So you see it pops up here. Look at that, Alameda trading some sushi here. And so this is, being streamed, right, from an Ethereum node into something called PubSub, which is like a messaging data product. And then that data gets basically pulled from PubSub and parsed, so we can pull out what are all the DEX trades, and then that gets channeled to another data storage, which we can query from the front end, and it just, streams all the data right to the front end.
Very cool. So we on the topic of improving the platform, improving the company as a whole, we are hiring these days. Maybe you can just give a quick mention of the roles that we're looking for, and if anyone in the chat has friends that are looking to join the team, or interested in joining a company like Nansen, feel free to refer them or ping us.
Yeah, we're looking for both technical roles, so research engineer, software engineer, product roles like product manager. We're also looking for people who, and I think maybe there are some people perhaps in like watching this who might be good candidates, but like community managers, for example. And we have actually thought it would be ideal if there are people already active in our Nansen community who are keen on applying for positions there. So I think community manager is probably a good one. Also like customer support, we need better staffing there, because we have more than 500 paying customers now, and it's we need to do a great job at servicing them. And if there are issues with payments or whatever, we need to help in a timely manner. So customer support is another role. We generally are also keen on working with people who have experience with data. So people who like to make dashboards, SQL, who enjoy, maybe if they're more on the technical side, like parsing data, working with on-chain data itself directly. So it's a pretty long list of roles. I think some of them are already out on our docs. So if you go to docs.nansen.ai, there's a section below the FAQ which lists some of these roles. It's actually, we're kind of moving pretty fast, so we don't have all the job descriptions out yet. It's a much longer list than this. We're probably aiming to hire another 10 people or so. Actually, more like 14 people. More people this year.
Yeah.
So But these are some roles you can look at: community manager, research analyst, customer support, digital marketing specialist, which we added yesterday. So yeah, that's the short version.
Perfect. There's quite a bit of discussion in the chat here. Some important questions. Number one, are we hiring anons, and can we set up an Allfrog customer support team?
That's a cool idea. It's a little bit tricky for us to hire anonymous people right now because it often involves some kind of data access, which is a bit risky with anonymous people. But there might be some roles where we could work with anonymous people. Yeah,
Thinking out loud here, I mean, one of the things that we really want to help, that we kind of want to build up at Nansen is more discussion around trading opportunities, around data that people discover. And so, right now, admittedly, our Discord isn't too active. Like the discussion over there isn't too active, but we'd love to have people start chatting over there more. So if you are an anonymous frog and you'd like to shoot the breeze about different, yield farms that you're finding, or when you find 3 arrows aping into some large positions or something like that, you're welcome to chat in about it in Nansen. And over time, as we have more discussion, we might kind of start, promoting people to like moderator or getting more integrated into the Nansen community.
Yeah, I think one thing we have found at many different tiers of Nansen is that if you share information, which maybe is counterintuitive, but if you share information with others on like yield farms, tokens, certain signals that you pick up, very often you get something in return for it, and what you get in return is often bigger than what you contributed. And we see that in our alpha tiers, for example, where people often share extremely valuable information to the other people in the group. But the expectation is that they will also learn even more than what they're sharing. And so I think that's the mindset we want to keep, not just in the alpha tiers, but also in our various Discord channels. So I would encourage, I mean, it might sound cheeky, but I would actually encourage you to share information when you spot things, because very often people will then share stuff back with you. And, if you can help one other person make a bit more money on the trading or yield farming, it's worth it if it ends up, surfacing some opportunities for you as well. So yeah, typically, if you share a farm with someone else, unless they're massive, it's not going to make a huge impact on your APY anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say maybe there's, you could think of it as like power law returns on alpha leaks, where, as long as you're sharing, eventually you'll find one that makes up the vast majority of your returns on alpha leak strategies to ape into.
Yeah. It's funny how the dynamics are a bit different in 2021 versus 2017, because in 2017 people were always sharing stuff a lot because it was a good thing that someone else aped into the token that you just bought. You're just shelling your own bags. But with yield farming, the dynamics are a bit different because, of course, if the pool gets diluted, well, if there's too much capital coming into the pool that you're farming, your yields get diluted. So typically people don't want to share, and that's, of course, why you use the term alpha leaking. But as I said, like in practice, unless you share it with tons of other people, or some massive player starts farming the same pool, it's unlikely that your yields will dilute that much.
Yeah, and I would say also that alpha leaks come in different flavors. Like there's so many different strategies to kind of make money in the DeFi markets these days. There is yield farming, and even there, I said before, there's like stablecoin yield farming and then degen yield farming. But there's also just going into secondary coin, or like just trading coins on the secondary markets. And even looking on the Nansen dashboards and seeing, okay, some whales are accumulating sushi. Let me talk to some people about this and see what else they're finding. And maybe sushi is a good opportunity, but maybe 1-inch is a better opportunity, or maybe BNT is a better opportunity. And if you are allocating your resources to dexes, or you're making a bet on different dexes, maybe you don't have enough capital to bet on everything. So you want to be as efficient as possible when making a dex bet, and see which or kind of make a bet on whichever horse will win that race, at least in the short term. And you might not be fully aware of all the different catalysts coming up, whether it's Bancor V2 or whether it's 1-inch going on to BSC, or you kind of want to put out some thoughts into the community, not necessarily ours, but just on Twitter or anywhere, and see what comes back. In terms of near-term catalysts.
Yeah. Good points. Yeah.
All right, continuing to go through the questions here. So on this DEX trades, and I guess on other dashboards as well, someone is asking, can we do some kind of filter for volume slash price impact?
Yeah, this is on the roadmap. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to add filters later this month, but we are kind of focusing a lot on trying to migrate over all these other dashboards to this new UI. But we do have it on the roadmap to actually do two things: to have filtering in place, and then also to have aggregations in place. Because this is all well and good, you can look at this here, but what if you just wanted to have like an overview of, hey, which tokens are actually traded the most right now at an aggregate level? And so that's going to come here as well in addition. So those two additions you can expect to see hopefully by the end of this month.
I think the price impact is actually a really interesting idea to see what kind of slippage occurred on that trade. Because I know when you, maybe it'd be hard to get the price before, because we're not necessarily querying that all the time, but definitely after the trade, it'd be cool to see.
I've actually looked into this, and at least with Uniswap and SushiSwap, it's not that hard to get that data, the slippage impact. Because it gets logged, I believe, in the trade. Yeah, I can't remember if it's the actual slippage that occurred, or if it's just the slippage threshold that the user set. In which case, it's maybe a bit less interesting. But I think it's a cool idea, and it should be possible to do. It's just not totally clear how easy it is to do.
Yeah. I guess
maybe I can actually. I don't know if it's very easy to see here, but if we click through on Etherscan, oh, look at that, we're faster than Etherscan. It's still pending here. So this is a trade. Let's see. Boom. Okay. Haha. That's funny. You can see the trade here, and it hadn't loaded on Etherscan. Nice. Here. Let's see. This is maybe going into the weeds a bit, but you can look at, when you have a transaction like this, you can look at the logs, and in the logs you will see events, like you have these kind of vanilla transfer events of the different tokens. You have the sync of the liquidity pool, and then you have the swap, which is the actual DEX trade. So the swap corresponds to, that's where we get the data from that we show in the live DEX trades view. But I think I might have to go down here. No. Yeah, actually, this is not a great example. But in any case, this wasn't a great example. There are some times where you can kind of see the slippage thing that I was talking about, but you don't see it in the event. You have to look at the function call traces, which maybe it's way too technical to cover here, but there should be ways for us to parse out that data. I think.
Luciano in the chat mentioned that contract, or that first transaction you're looking at, might have been a front-running bot. So
yeah, it was.
It was right.
Look,
okay.
We're ahead of Etherscan again.
Let's go.
What's going on?
Wait, so yeah, okay, that's interesting. if these don't confirm, like, what do you think? So this maybe can be just a quick discussion on like design decisions as we're putting together these dashboards, and how you think about, you know, us showing the fastest data on these dashboards versus only confirmed transactions. What would be your thought process on figuring that out?
So we probably so what is a confirmed transaction, right? It means that it was mined. So we might just be using different, or the nodes that we use are not the same as Etherscan's nodes. So our nodes picked up that transaction before Etherscan. Now there is like an issue with finality and like uncle blocks and things like that. So there, yeah, it could actually theoretically happen that data shows up here, and then basically there's a fork, right? Which means that in the end, the transaction you saw here, it didn't actually get executed, or it got executed like in a later block. So yeah, that happens very rarely. And so that's something to be aware of course. Most of our dashboards account for finality, so we kind of add a buffer to make sure we don't show any data that was not included, you know, in the main chain that we're on. But this one is like, the intention is that it should be very real time, and you know, it's a stream, so like the data kind of just passes through here. And so yeah, that's kind of how we're thinking about how we're approaching it.
Perfect. Just answering some of the questions here real quick in the chat. Would it be possible to get the Nansen profiler link and the hot contracts and token flows screen? Do you mean the wallet profiler, EI? That's one of the questions.
This one here? Or?
Yeah, let's see what he says. Just figuring out if he can clarify that question. And then the next one would be, can you quickly show how to get the best value from the token flows dashboard that we quickly peeked at earlier?
Yeah, let's look at this. Token flows.
And then after that, we can maybe we can pull up Duck for algorithms in the chat.
Cool. Yeah, so token flows, it is kind of experimental, but it shows two different sections. It shows it's conceptually similar to hot contracts, except instead of contracts, we're now looking at tokens, and you're looking at positioning of smart money addresses. And so inflow 1 hour, NFTX 49,000, means that some smart money wallets have been accumulating, or at least receiving tokens, and NFTX tokens. If we take a 7-day view, there's this IBETH, which I think is alpha, right? ZKS, which is this ZK swap, I think it's called, Wi-Fi and Rook, TBTC, Pickle, Curve. Okay, this is on a 7-day basis, right? You can also flip it around and say like, there's outflowing sushi, interesting. Outflowing SRM, also interesting. Uni, staked ETH, SFI, and so on. And so what is the value of this? Well, this gives you an idea of what the smart money is actively transacting. So maybe there's stuff that you should be aware of with some of these top tokens at both sides of the spectrum, both inflow and outflow. So I think of this as like kind of like a weather report or something like that. You go in here and you get an idea of like what the smart money is doing with their tokens. There's also exchanges, which is kind of conceptually quite different. So I'm not sure maybe it's not a great idea to have these in the same dashboard, but this one just shows like token flow to and from exchanges. So like audio, I guess that's Audius, right? There's been an inflow to exchanges in the last hour. If you look at 1 day, there's a lot of Aave going into exchanges and a lot of sushi. So it could be that some of the sushi that goes into exchanges, we also saw sushi going out of smart money wallets, right? So maybe some of the smart money Sushi tokens are going into exchanges, either liquidity provisioning or selling.
I feel like we should specify that. I feel like it's important to know if someone's actually depositing it into Binance, for example, versus LPing into a DEX.
Yeah, yeah. It's just kind of tricky to, yeah. We might want to split those two things off as and call them separate types of exchange flows.
Yeah. Okay, moving on here because we are in the final 10 minutes. Before we go into Duck, let's actually look at BNT real quick because that was one of the requests from the beginning from Luciano. Sorry, I missed that earlier, Luciano. So I think it'd be good to just when we look at a token, point out some of the things that stand out to you. For example, checking tokens on exchanges or checking the top inflows or outflows in the balances section, or check the top balances.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with BNT then. Typically, looking at exchanges is interesting because when you have this, it looks like a lot of tokens have been going into exchanges here, and then now it seems to maybe have been to be reversing. A lot of those tokens are on Bancor itself, which makes sense because BNT is for Bancor, right? And so this is maybe where it gets a little bit more interesting because you can look at balance changes. So it's similar to the token flow idea. You look at who's accumulating tokens and who's selling them off. And so we see some interesting stuff here. First of all, a lot of BNT tokens are going into banker pools. So not sure. I mean, we could try to figure out like who's depositing those, but maybe there are certain liquidity incentives or something. Not sure. Should probably investigate that. But who's sending these tokens? So, well, you see some tokens going out of Coinbase. You see DeFi Maximalist. You see Adriano.eth. Smart LP here. And maybe we can have a look afterwards to see what they're doing. Specifically, we could drill down on like DeFi Maximalist, for example. Oh, okay. Well, actually, we should scroll down here and you see top transactions. They are putting them into liquidity protection. Okay. Same with DeFi Whale. Liquidity protection. Oh, this is interesting. Binance sends to 3 arrows. 3 arrows sends to DeFi Whale.eth. I guess you can draw your own conclusions. Some affiliated partners there, perhaps.
Could be an OTC deal or something, though. Maybe 3 Arrows is able to accumulate a larger amount at a better fill price.
Maybe, or maybe 3 Arrows Capital has a smaller fund that they own, which does DeFi.
Yeah, no comment.
Top balances here, yeah. There's a lot of pools now. So it looks like a lot of the BNT tokens are in banker pools. By the way, we've improved our tagging of banker pools, so you can actually see the tokens and all that stuff gets automatically labeled up. So I think this is pretty good now, like the coverage. We also didn't look at this Wintermute Binance deposit because we've done some work there as well. Wintermute's a market maker, so I guess they're market making for Bancor. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff here actually. There's a price action as well, which is kind of interesting against Ether to look at.
Maybe you can also just quickly pull up the hodler segments, or kind of the cohorts, effectively.
These ones.
Yeah.
These ones here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea here is to look at the distribution over addresses or over tokens and look at the seniority of the addresses. So like when did they receive the tokens? So on an address level, actually most, or not most, but like 45% of the addresses received their BNT tokens more than 2 years ago. So they're kind of like old hodlers. But if you look at the number of tokens, it looks like a lot of the tokens were just quite recently shuffled or sent elsewhere. So 56% were first acquired by these addresses like 2 or 3 months ago. 2 to 3 months ago. So there's kind of like a rotation of tokens into newer wallets, which could be maybe some of these pools, right? If you look at the days since first received up here, it looks like many of these banker pools received the tokens like almost like between 2 and 3 months ago. So I think that's what's skewing it. Actually, you can see like banker pool, right? All these are like 70 to 80 days ago. So there's some kind of mass rotation into these pools of BNT tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but already now, like you can, you just have like immediately a much better overview of what's happening with BNT. You see the different parties that are making transactions with it. You see like where it's sitting in all these different banker pools. You see the seniority of the hodler segments, right? There's like, and it takes you 5 to 10 minutes to get this overview, just looking at the chart.
Yeah. I think maybe another thing, since it is interesting that a lot of people got in like 70 to 80 days ago, when you see a lot of numbers like that, it's also worth going back in the news cycle or like checking old articles and seeing what was published then. Like it could be a V2 published or, an announcement of something coming out. Yeah, so Anon friend says V2. So it's interesting to see who accumulated then and who has been holding on since then. And as you start identifying different wallets to track and kind of smart money to track, you can see who has strong hands, who gets in positions early on versus people who are just kind of chasing the pump right now or, FOMOing in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I got curious on what this one is. This token millionaire. Because you could do if you feel like the description is not clear enough, sometimes you can actually just drill down by clicking on wallet profiler, and then you can maybe try to work out like what is this address. So here it just has a bunch of behavioral labels like token millionaire, heavy dex trader, high balance, high activity, and it's been receiving tokens since February 18th. Those tokens have come from 1inch. So, I don't know, this looks to me like it's some kind of entity that's accumulating BNT from 1inch. We don't know who they are. You could also look them up in the kind of generic wallet profiler to see if they hold other tokens. But this looks like very clear accumulation, just buying from 1inch.
One thing that someone asked in the chat was how we do the wallet labeling, or the account labeling. So maybe you can just quickly touch on why we have multiple labels and how we're assigning these labels. We don't need to get too into the weeds there, but just to answer that.
I just wanted to mention like this token millionaire. If you look them up on Wallet Profiler, you can see that they've been active with this wallet since November 15th, and you can also see like the different entities that they transact with. So like probably they have a Binance account because there's a lot of Ether, quite a bit of Ether coming from Binance. They use 1inch, they use FTX, Whiteheart. So they probably participated in the Whiteheart ICO or IBCO. And so it's just like, okay, we just spotted something. Maybe this guy I would put up a smart alert for. If you're holding BNT and then you see this wallet that appears to be some kind of trader or investor, and they've accumulated 2.1 million BNT tokens, I'd probably want to know if they start selling, for example, because they've only been accumulating so far.
I think another note there is, we were talking about different trading strategies and different types of wallets to track. It looks like this person isn't staking, which is quite interesting. They've got 13 million BNT, but they're not actually putting that BNT to work like some of these other wallets are. So if you are the type of trader who's just making catalyst-based trades or kind of doing directional trades, this could be someone that you follow. See, this is someone who accumulates early on, although it didn't seem like it was that early. It looks like they started accumulating on February 18th, which is fairly recent. But yeah, it's not someone who's yield farming. So if you're not a yield farmer, maybe this is a more relevant wallet to you.
100%. So maybe I can answer the question about wallet labeling, how we do it.
Please.
So high level, it's a combination of three things. The first is a large set of algorithms. So it's like algorithmic approaches. So there's a lot of transactional patterns that we can recognize and automate. And then from those automations, we can just tag up lots of wallets. And that's like 99.99% of all our labels. Like most of them are actually algorithmic. Then we do a lot of in-house research. So we have research analysts and research engineers who look at the blockchain all the time. And we have alerting infrastructure in-house. We have dashboards that make it easier to monitor what's happening. And so and also makes it really easy for us to tag up wallets very fast. And then now we're investing more in proper tooling around kind of combining the manual input that we get from human moderators, the research analysts, with more automated, algorithmic, machine learning powered methods and so on. So that's kind of it at a high level. We also get submissions quite a lot from our customers, because our customers want our product to be really good because they use it, right? So they make submissions to us as well. And we want to streamline this a bit more because it's kind of ad hoc right now. But yeah, that's roughly how we do it at a high level.
Okay, and lightning round here, just to answer some of these final questions, just in a couple sentences. Any new features coming to the standard tier?
Yes, I mean there's features coming all the time. I would say NFT dashboard coming is maybe something to look forward to. The typical rollout is that we release to VIPs and alphas first, so they can give their feedback, and then it comes to standard later. So, yeah, that's probably the main one that comes to mind.
Okay. What tier would you recommend for someone new? I guess
Standard.
I'll field that one. Just feel free to do a trial, 7-day trial. If you have any questions or want to do a demo or something, reach out to me. Happy to kind of walk you through the product. Either that, or I would actually recommend going to our YouTube channel, which is slightly more scalable because I only have so many hours in the day to do demos. But our YouTube channel has a bunch of recommendations on how to use the different dashboards. So yeah, trial and then upgrade to standard whenever you feel comfortable. Medium Dex Trader asks, if you have multiple ENS names, can someone choose how to show them in Nansen or select which one we prioritize?
We can override it, so we can choose it. So practically speaking, what's the best way to do it? I mean, someone might not want to dox themselves, right? But you can, to make things simple, you can just ping us in Discord, and if we find some way that we can verify that you own the address, for example, we could easily just override it manually.
Yeah. That is something that we've seen in the past, like people wanting to plant their flag, on the different leaderboards or like the different dashboards, and they want to set up an ENS address and be seen as almost like a flex or a way of publicly trading and growing their stack size.
So to keep it simple, just ping us in Discord, and we can probably find a way to sort that out.
Perfect. I think that's roughly all the questions. If you guys have any burning questions that we didn't get to, feel free to reach out to us either on Twitter or on Discord. Alex, any parting notes?
No, not really. I mean, thanks for joining, everyone. It's great to get the questions. And yeah, just keep it coming. Like keep using the product. We're gonna get better ways for you to give more direct feedback. This is something we talked about in one of the meetings we had internally today. And that's it. Stay tuned.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we'll be posting this video on YouTube, so you can watch a recap there. Sign up for the next one whenever we post that. We also have our newsletter, which goes out every Friday, and there will be a link in the newsletter for the next sign-up link for the next session. So catch you guys all on Twitter, and see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.